Here at Louisville Motor Speedway, the 1988 champion, Bill Webb. Back to row number 2, you'll find the current champion, 1989 champion here at Louisville Motor Speedway, and sponsored by Custom Concepts as well as McDonald's Restaurants of Greater Louisville and Gregg and Landreth Cars, the number 8 of Chuck Winders. Outside of him, the only 2-time winner of the Kentucky Asphalt Championship as the field pulls away on the front straightaway. And he's sponsored by Albin's Used Cars, a 2-time Kentucky Motor Speedway track champion, Larry Metters. Back to row number 3. On the inside from Iroquois Park, Kentucky. Also a former Fairgrounds Motor Speedway track champion, taking that title in the final year of operation in 1980, and then coming back this season and winning this year's Louisville 150. The fine driver sponsored by Barley Ford, by far the best, as well as Kentucky Anna Auto Trim and Pike Racing Chassis. It's Keith Gardner. On back in the lineup to car number 44, his first appearance here at Louisville Motor Speedway, driving for Robert Holbert Trucking Company as well as Robert Holbert Construction Company and Ramco Leasing. He's currently 3rd in the All-American Challenge Series of NASCAR and is going to be running for Rookie of the Year honors this year as well. And the number 44 is Mike Garvey. On back in the lineup, a 2-time new and late model division champion from the Charlestown Motor Speedway and former Kentucky Asphalt champion, car number 28, his JDC Cable Television Company and Tomcat Motorsports and College Shop Pontiac Trans Am out of Sea-Line Engineering, and it's Frank Kimmel. On back, car number 77, a driver that has raced all around from Louisville, Kentucky to Daytona Beach, Florida on the high banks on the ARCA Touring Circuit, and the number 77, sponsored by Kentucky Engine Rebuilders as well as Marshall Auto Parts, and the driver Buddy Fannin. On back to the 1977 late model division champion at Fairgrounds Motor Speedway, sponsored by Coyle Chevrolet and JB's Body Shop. He's won the International 500, and he's won the first ever Kentucky Asphalt Championship down at Whitesville. The number 20 of Preston Ford. Another driver in a star-studded field of drivers, a former IHRA and NHRA drag racing champion, national and regional titles there. Former UMP, a track champion from Glasgow. The number 11, now in his 5th year of racing asphalt. The number 11, sponsored by Bachman Chevrolet, as well as Kroger's Racing Engines and Pipe Fitters Local 522, and the driver Joe Williamson Sr. On back, a first-year driver, sponsored by Kentuckiana Service Center, as well as Boone & Boone Sanitation. Car number 6, completing his first full year of operating in the late model division, and out of Crestwood, Kentucky, it's car number 6, Rick Racing Car. On back, you'll find the number 74 after just a super season in his rookie year driving late model stock cars, and incidentally, the sponsor of this race, the Metal Center Bluegrass 300, is sponsoring this car all of the 1989 racing season. The number 74 of Brian Baum. On back, we'll find car number 100, the 1979 late model division champion, a former track champion at the Sportstrome as well, and actually winning the Junkyard 100. Driving car number 100, Keith Storms. On back in the lineup in the Moncana Farms Racing Pontiac, the 71 of Henry Wallace out of Prospect. Also filling out the field from Somerset, Kentucky, the Monfreed Opticals Pontiac Trans Am from Somerset, the number 27 of Jack Cornett. And then it is car number 3, Marty Belcher from Brooks, Kentucky, a Charlestown 150 2-time winner. And then looking back into the field as well, the number 01, the Rookie of the Year in the late model division here at Louisville Motor Speedway this year, Steve Webb in his budget rent-a-car and truck Thunderbird Super Coupe. On back in the lineup, the 69 of Bill Kimmel Jr., and he's sponsored by John Jones GM City, getting a feature win in 1989. And then on back to Steady Freddie Williams, the car number 95 on the outside of that row, a 2-time Charlestown late model champion in his Convenient Food Marts and Video Shacks Pontiac. Junior Blankenship, 3 times a Sportsman Division champion, and in his 3rd year of late model division competition. On back, a 2nd-generation driver of the Blanchard's Auto Service Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe, and the driver Leonard Blanchard Jr., the 99 of Larry Clyer, Houseman Motors sponsored Pontiac Trans Am. And then on back to our final row, veteran driver car number 66, Lenny LeGrand, in his JB's Body Shop, Hans Trucking Company Pontiac Grand Prix. And on the outside of the final row, sometimes an All-American Challenge Series driver and a former track champion at Kentucky Motor Speedway, the number 47, our final starter at position number 24, Gregg Pike. Good evening, this is Frank Scott sitting in with Scott Douglas tonight, bringing you back the Metal Center Bluegrass 300, the longest race of the year, the longest race ever here at Louisville Motor Speedway for late model stock cars. And Scott Douglas pit stops have got to be some strategy there.
Absolutely, and that's something we're going to keep our eyes on, as Carl Blanton will have that camera trained in at different times tonight on some of the critical pit stops. When it gets down to the pits, you can single out a bunch. We'll have to see how they play. I do know that in the Chevrolet Louisville 150 earlier this year, pit stops, the night it was rained out, looked like they might have actually given a big advantage to Scott Walters. That Harris crew is outstanding. They'll be good. But a lot of these crews have worked together. The Tomcat crew of Frank Kimmel. Preston Ford's got a lot of very experienced guys. And you can go down the list. Nobody turns wrenches like Kevin Gardner. Todd Hash and Mickey Clyer with what they've done with Chuck Winders this year. The Webb Motorsports team. And you can keep going through all the top contenders. The Metterses have been around there. They know maybe they haven't done exactly all the pit stops. So if there's an advantage to it, it may be one guy I haven't mentioned. And that's the 44 of Mike Garvey. He does have a crew that's been changing tires and putting in gas all year long on the All-American Challenge Series. We'll see if it comes into play. If it does, Mike may get an advantage. He's got a pretty good race car, as the Robert Earl car is up front.
Scott Douglas, you were with the NASCAR officials at some pre-race meetings. And we'll ask Carl Blanton to please pan back and take a look at this, how will they enter the pit area?
All right, they'll come in off turn number 2, and that's where we'll look at it now. As you see the track here from Carl's vantage point on top, they'll come off the front straightaway, then they'll go down into that first turn. When they come out of the first turn, and before you can see, they head down the back straightaway. Now, on the back, right in the middle of your screen right now, you'll see one white barricade. That is actually the entrance to pit road. They'll come down there, come down to their pit stall. You'll see them lined up in a parallel chute. They'll park parallel in the pits. Then they will come back out onto the racetrack at the end right there in turn number 4. They will come out straight on out and turn right back onto the front straightaway. This was the same entrance and exit used by the NASCAR Busch Grand National teams. Worked very well that night. We hope it'll do as well tonight for our teams. Very critical to watch if a yellow comes out and see how these teams get in and get out. And, of course, the scorers are going to have a tough job tonight, too. It's something new for them. The pace car's pulled off, and Frank Scott's going to start the Metal Center Bluegrass 300.
Field gets double stacked in the middle of the back straightaway. Iroquois Park, Kentucky. Scott Walters sitting on the pole position with a new track record and defending late model champion on the outside front row. Bill Webb will bring them down for a start. As they come to Mike Harwood's green flag, the 1989 Metal Center Bluegrass 300 is underway. And down the back straightaway, Scott Walters in the Roadrunner Video Club's IROC Camaro shoves it up into fast forward. Comes around, completes lap number 1 with Webb at second. Winders goes third. At fourth, it's Keith Gardner. Rounding out the top 5, Larry Metters. It's very important to go conservatively here in the early going. This just doesn't look like the start of a 30-lap feature event, Scott Douglas.
No, exactly. And indeed, they want to drop in, get them a good spot, see if they can pick up a spot or two on the start, but you don't want to use up your tires, your brakes, or your race car this early in the race. And already we got a problem at the end of the chute, at the end of the front straightaway. Bill Kimmel Jr., Junior Blankenship, Fred Williams, Leonard Blanchard Jr. all getting together. Now, something different. Laps under yellow will count, and nobody will be allowed to come into the pits until they get the situation, they get the pace car out to pick up the leader, and he'll pick up the leader after this lap. You see that. Very important, though, from the track officials' point of view, that they get the pace car to pick up the leader. And on the back straightaway right now in the pits, I don't know if Carl will get a chance to go to the pit entrance with his camera. You'll see one of our officials in the entrance. He is holding up a red flag. That means the pits are completely closed right now. They'll remain closed until the leader is picked up by our pace car. Now, the next time they come around, if someone decides they want to pit, you'll see that pit open. And indeed, the track official has moved away now, and the pits will be opened up.
We've only gone 4 laps. We see our first caution flag period. What comes into play here is fuel mileage. Actually, how many laps they can go before they can make that pit stop and then continue the rest of the race. We've taken a poll through the pit area, and it's very apparent which drivers are running 15-gallon fuel cells and which drivers are running the 22-gallon fuel cell. For the drivers that have 22 gallons of racing fuel on their race car, they will only have to stop once. But if they have the smaller cell, the 15-gallon cell, which is great for local stock car racing and the 30-lap features from week to week throughout the summer, if they have that 15-gallon cell, they will have to stop at least twice. You can just about bet on it. Stopping once will cut it just almost too close there at the end, and you can look for some of those drivers to be stopping twice. So we're under our first caution flag period. The pit area is open. However, it is way too soon for anyone to jump into the pit area and splash in just a little bit of gas now, because they'll have to stop later, and you're running a chance of losing your starting position back in the lineup again. So we're under caution. We'll be back with the restart in just a moment. Less than a half a lap to go, and we'll be back. Green flag racing. There's the young driver who will pace the field in a single file formation as they move down into turns 3 and 4. Hello once again, Frank Scott, along with Scott Douglas, to bring you back all the flag-to-flag coverage of one of the late model classics here at Louisville Motor Speedway, the Metal Center Bluegrass 300. And down the back straightaway, Scott Walters opens it up about 4 car lengths, defending late model champion, the number 1 of Bill Webb, and current track champion. Car number 8, Chuck Winders, runs at 3rd. At 4th, it's Keith Gardner. And rounding out the top 5, the number 05 of Larry Metters.
Dropping back to the 6th spot right now is the 28 of Frank Kimmel. And then Mike Garvey, we've talked about in the 44, another guy who we expect to show strength late in the race, depending on how the car is. You know Mike can go the distance, Rookie of the Year contender in the All-American Challenge. Buddy Fannin, how about that story, Frank Scott? He's really come on as of late. An ARCA veteran, another guy who's gone the distance, and another guy who's gone the distance, that beautiful coil car with Preston Ford. You know, we talk about these guys being used to 30-lap features, but there's a whole bunch of racing experience on that track right now and a load of talent.
Our track promoter, Andy Vertrees, who knows a little something about racing, believe me, has said that Buddy Fannin actually shows his best strength in 300 and 500 lap races. So you can't count out the Buddy Fannin, the driver Buddy Fannin in the number 77, that Kentucky engine rebuilders, Marshall's Auto Parts, IROC Camaro, as he leads Preston Ford. And once again, this is some good, great racing just inside the top 10 here, the 77, and then the number 20, Coyle Chevrolet IROC there of Preston Ford. As they move into turns 3 and 4 and down the front straightaway. Battle for a position now into turns 1 and 2. Carl Blanton's right on him. It's the number 98 of Keith Gardner. This is the battle for 3rd, and it's Gardner in that Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe trying to dice with the 1989 champion here in the late model division, Chuck Winders, as they wheel off into turns 1 and 2. And again, Gardner's automobile evidently hooking up well on the bottom side of the racetrack. And Scott Douglas, would you not think that Winders should maybe let Gardner go on around this early in the contest?
Yeah, but it's too much against Chuck's grain to let anybody go. However, here's something from the rumor mill, Frank, and that is that the Chuck Winders crew thought that, hey, with a couple of carburetor adjustments, they might have done something to restrict the flow of fuel into that carburetor, whether it was go to a smaller one or restrict the flow after qualifying. I want to watch for that and see if Chuck's car appears to maybe not have quite the horsepower or quite the strength of the other ones, looking for fuel mileage. We'll see. He's now begun to pull back away from Keith Gardner, but that's maybe something to watch. Gardner or Winders' crew felt like they didn't need that much fuel. If they could save a little bit of it and stay among the top guys and save themselves a late pit stop, they might be able to win the race.
We talked to Chuck a little bit earlier this evening. He says he can go 200 laps on a full fuel load, so we'll have to continue to monitor this. In the meanwhile, Scott Walters, who had that great big advantage on the rest of the field, has now got some company, and that's very fast company. The number 1 of Bill Webb as they move down into turns 3 and 4. The leader, Scott Walters. And it looks like, Scott Douglas, you've got a comment.
Mike Garvey slowed quite a bit as he'll come down the front straightaway here in just a moment. I don't know what happened to the 44 because it looks like he's back up to speed. Mike, you know, it's an unfamiliar car to him. That's Robert Earl's car. He slowed and didn't cost him a spot. He's still in there, but apparently not a problem. He is drifting up every now and then. We'll watch the handling on that car later.
We're 25 laps into the Metal Center Bluegrass 300, and we're watching some of Kentuckiana's greatest drivers right there in your picture, moving into turns 3 and 4. That's Mike Garvey. He's currently 3rd on the All-American Challenge Series circuit, running for Rookie of the Year honors this year in that division. Looking to the inside of Iroquois Park, Kentucky's Larry Metters, and pulls the trigger. He's got his man at the end of the back straightaway, moving into turns 3 and 4. He's currently 5th now in the lineup. Mike Garvey, formerly out of Muskegon, Michigan, I believe, now residing in Brooks, Kentucky. So that's Mike Garvey, our first look at him in 1989 here at Louisville Motor Speedway. Moving into turns 3 and 4, they're running at 5th. And as they come down the front straightaway, lap traffic has got to be a factor in this race, and that's what Scott Walters will have to contend with. He's just worked his way around the Rookie of the Year here at Louisville Motor Speedway in the late model division, Steve Webb.
We'll keep a camera just a bit back now. The leaders have cleared that lap traffic, but Keith Gardner is trying to use that lap traffic to get around Chuck Winders. There you see him. It's Winders in the 8th. Now Gardner has to go behind him as they work around Somerset, Kentucky's Jack Cornett.
And again, to the outside of Steve Webb in that Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe. Chuck Winters working the outside well, as he has all of the 1989 racing season here at Louisville Motor Speedway. They're moving in on the 69, and that is Bill Kimmel Jr. earlier with a feature event win here at Louisville Motor Speedway, but it doesn't look like the John Jones GM City IROC is up to snuff right now. But on the other hand, this could be some strategy looking for the gas mileage.
Frank, I just wanted to note they have just completed a normal Louisville Motor Speedway feature, and they've got 270 laps left to run.
They're a tenth of the way here, 30 laps down, and it looks like about 270 to go here. They're down the back straightaway. There's the number 8, Chuck Winters, 1989 season champion here at Louisville Motor Speedway in the Winston Bush late models. And believe it or not, Chuck's been racing about 8 or 9 seasons, but this was his first championship. Boy, I tell you what, we were glad to see that. And Scott Douglas, he did well in the region this year.
He's 4th in NASCAR's Mid-American region, and so Chuck will be getting out the tuxedos and heading for Nashville for a big night in November. Hey, Mike Garvey's putting some pressure on Keith Gardner right now. That's the battle for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And so as Garvey pressures Gardner, Gardner says, well, wait a minute, maybe I need to go after Winters. This could get interesting, 3, 4, and 5. Winters, though, as you mentioned, headed for the National Champions Banquet. Well, he'll be honored along with the new national champion, Larry Metters.
There's Keith Gardner down the back straightaway. He finished 3rd in the point standings this season.
Larry Phillips, although Larry Metters hopes to be the next national champion, Larry Phillips out of Missouri is the Winston Racing Series national champion.
Chuck Winters needs to saddle up that pony and head west, go gun down an outlaw. 35 in the books here tonight at Louisville Motor Speedway. Your leader is Scott Walters in the Roadrunner Video Clubs, Conover's Body Shop, and Taylor's House of Color. IROC Z28 with that fabulous Auburndale Auto Parts and Machine Racing engine under the hood. At second with a red Worrell racing engine, and sponsored by Budget Rent-A-Car and Truck, as well as Charlie's Seafood Restaurant and Lounge, the number 1 of Bill Webb. And then that great battle back at 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It's the, trouble over in turn 2, and we were right going to them. It's the Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe, the number 96 of Leonard Blanchard Jr. As they come to the line, the caution flag comes out, and it looks like you can just about lay a blanket over those first 5 positions.
Yeah, but hey, tip the hat to Mike Garvey in the 44. He picked up a spot on Keith Gardner there as they race back to the yellow, and if I'm not mistaken, the All-American Challenge cars hold their spots when the yellow comes out. So that was a quick adaptation of Louisville Speedway rules. Mike obviously read the rule book before he came. He gets a spot that he had been working hard for. He's able to get it kind of the easy way.
You got to be on your toes here to pick up just anything you can get here at the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway. We'll take a break in the action after 39 laps of competition in the 1989 Metal Center Bluegrass 300. Back under green in the 1989 Metal Center Bluegrass 300, and it's car number 5, Scott Walters, the number 1 of Bill Webb, rounding out the top 3, charging Chuck Winters in the number 8. Then it's Mike Garvey, as Scott Douglas documented a little bit earlier, picking up that 4th position, and then rounding out the top 5, it is Keith Gardner in the car number 98. Several cars have made pit stops in the larger pit area here at Louisville Motor Speedway, but only the number 69 of Bill Kimmel Jr. has used the infield so far after 46 laps of competition.
After some early problems, Brian Baum in the Metal Center, number 74, has come back out, and so has the 96 of Leonard Blanchard. They both, I believe, spent a little time in the pits.
Field works off turn 2 and down the back straightaway. Car number 5, Scott Walters, still out front. He'll reel in on that Metal Center IROC Z28, the 74 of Brian Baum, as they move into turns 1 and 2. And down the back straightaway, and we'll have to watch that Mike Garvey. It looks like he would like to get a hold of that Chuck Winters. And they're out of turn number 4. They're bumper to bumper on the front straightaway. Keith Gardner once again rounding out that top 5.
Yeah, I don't think Keith Gardner's real excited about the fact that Garvey tapped him a bit and went around him to go that last yellow. And Keith would love to get up there and take a shot at the big guy right now.
Out of turn 4, they're bumper to bumper, and you can throw a blanket over the first 5 cars, and then it's about 10 car lengths back to the 05 of Larry Metters, the number 28 of Frank Kimmel. They're running at 6th and 7th, going 8th on the field. It's car number 20, I'm going to imagine Preston Ford, and he's stuck in behind some lap traffic there. As Brian Baum cuts down, it looks like a left front tire. He's headed back towards the pit area. But Preston Ford working some traffic here. He's inside the top 10, and we feel that the number 77 of Buddy Fannin is probably on the lead lap and inside the top 10 as well. And then the number 6 of Rick Carr, perhaps.
On the back straightaway, Garvey tried to get a piece. Now they're coming into turn 3. Garvey tried to get a piece of Chuck Winders and made a little contact, but was unable to pick up the spot. Chuck still third. Wanted to just got to give a call to Brian Baum. I know he's got to feel really badly. His main sponsor, Metal Center, the big sponsor here tonight. He wanted to do well, but some nights things just don't work out. It's been a tough night already for Brian.
53 in the books. And down the front straightaway, battle back at third place, and some sparks coming off Joe Williamson Sr.'s car. He heads for the infield, but he'll get back in the lineup. Meanwhile, the number 44 of Mike Garvey is no longer fishing, folks. He's hunting for bear coming out of turn number 4. And now Gardner will try to retrieve that top 5 spot moving into turns 1 and 2, and this is for position number 4 on the field. The battle, car number 44, Mike Garvey along the inside of Keith Gardner, washes him up the 12-degree banking a little bit up in turn number 4. They'll drop back in single file formation, work their way around the outside of Cheveley, Kentucky's Larry Clyer.
Garvey wanted to challenge Winders and made a move, couldn't get around Chuck, and all of a sudden Gardner came back at him. That was what Gardner was wanting. Then Garvey looked up and saw the slower car of Larry Clyer there, and he literally had to force his way back in front of Keith Gardner to get back in line, or he'd have probably lost 2 spots.
Make the right decision, you're going forward. Make the wrong one, you're going to go backwards on this field. You see the domino effect coming out of turn number 4 and down into turns 1 and 2, and they're bumper to bumper. Once again, the first 5 cars, but it's Mike Garvey really doing the short track racing out there tonight as they move into turns 3 and 4, and again coming up on more lap traffic as our leader Scott Walters puts his Roadrunner Video Club's IROC around the outside of the 66 Lenny LeGrand. Bill Webb in tow as well as they come off turn 2 and down the back straightaway in attempt to reel in Keith Storms in the number 100.
When they look at this videotape later, no matter what else happens, Bill Webb and Scott Walters are really glad, and they knew they wanted to be here, but they're really glad right now that they're away from that battle. Look out, Garvey's in a little bit of trouble behind him, and Gardner will now try to get around him on the back straightaway. He cannot. Garvey and Gardner are just at war back there battling for 4th, and Frank, there's just 60 laps down. It's too early for this, really, for both of those drivers good. And now Garvey with a puff of smoke. He's in trouble. I think that's tire smoke, but it may be worse than that. It is worse than that. Garvey's in trouble.
Whoa, and he finds out that he doesn't like those speed bumps either down in turns 3 and 4, sending the car a little airborne, and it'll bring out the caution flag. It looks as though it is oil out of the automobile. You see a trace of it going into turns 1 and 2, and it looks as though the Robert Holbert Trucking Company and Construction Company, Ramco Leasing, Pontiac, is having power failure out here at Louisville Motor Speedway, and he'll be headed down pit road. If we can keep the camera on him here, perhaps he'll pull down to the infield, and the pit entrance is still closed because the pace car has not picked up the field yet. It'll be interesting to see what Garvey tries to do here. Now let's see, he pulls up along Henry Wallace and now Marty Belcher. And since there is no pace car to pass, I guess he is doing so legally, but he is definitely trying to put that car in the pit area here and probably go in and check that oil. So it's Mike Garvey still circulating around this Louisville Motor Speedway as our beautiful Tri-City Oldsmobile pace car picks up the leaders, and Garvey will be looking for his way into the pit area here shortly. We're under caution at the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway. One of the first pit stops we're seeing here in the Metal Center Bluegrass 300, the 44 there of Mike Garvey and the 96 of Leonard Blanchard Jr. on pit road.
Not sure exactly. Now, they're looking at tires, and as you said, it didn't look like tire smoke, but they're basically on the Garvey car checking the tires, and I noticed the track crew did not put down any oil dry, so maybe that's the problem right now, and indeed, it appears they're going to change tires on the Mike Garvey car. He has lost 1 lap now in the pits, and we'll see how much this costs him. This is a race where we talked earlier where you could probably lose a lap or 2 and get back, but now as the hood comes off, the problems may be deeper than that for Mike Garvey.
Earlier in the week, they noticed a slight design flaw in the mounting of the rear springs on the car. The first time out during practice, they were rubbing the springs were rubbing the tires, and we may be seeing that problem resurface again. Mike Garvey now 1 lap down to the field as Leonard Blanchard Jr. and his Blanchard's Auto Service Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe rejoins the field, and it looks as though Garvey is set to go 2 laps down. So we'll keep you abreast on the pit stop situation. Now we see the 77 of Buddy Fannin in our picture as he attempts to pull away away, popping the clutch. And the number 77 of Buddy Fannin, the Kentucky Engine Rebuilders, Marshall's Auto Parts IROC Camaro, getting into the pit area. And once again, this is much, much too early for fuel stops. And what we're seeing is mechanical problems on the cars, and that's the reason for the stops this early. So as the problems persist on the 44 of Mike Garvey, we'll take another break in the action at the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway. At the Louisville Motor Speedway as the field goes back, green flag racing at lap number 72. It's car number 5, Scott Walters out front. The Roadrunner Video Club's IROC Camaro, a lapped car. Keith Storms running right in front of Bill Webb, our second place running automobile, car number 1, as they come out of turn number 4, side by side now. And let's see if Webb can get around Storms moving into turns 1 and 2. Off turn number 2 and down the back straightaway. And it's Webb around Storms. Car number 8, charging Chuck Winders, currently goes third. At 4th, it's Keith Gardner at car number 98. And then Frank Kimmel now shows up for one of the first times inside the top 5 as well as they go down the backstretch. Car number 05, Larry Metters, goes 6th. At 7th, it's the number 20 of Preston Ford going 8th. It'll be car number 3, perhaps, of Marty Belcher, perhaps at the number 8 position. So that's the only positions we know of as being official. We feel the number 77 of Buddy Fannin is perhaps inside the top 10 as well. 76 laps now complete. Leaders are off turn number over to turn 4. And there is Scott Walters at car number 5. Currently the leader. Bill Webb keeping him in the sights. Chuck Winders running a conservative race at this point, not really pressuring for position nor being challenged as he moves into turns 3 and 4. And the 98 of Keith Gardner there at 4th, going 5th, the number 28 of Frank Kimmel. And into turns 1 and 2, Kimmel will work the outside of Keith Storms, putting him yet another lap down. Metters pulls in with him in the 05 of Albin's Used Cars Racing Pontiac Trans Am as they come out of turn 4 into turns 1 and 2. 79 complete, coming up on the lap number 80 and down the back straightaway. Scott Douglas, it looks as though we're about ready to approach that window. The 80-lap mark is where Bill Webb said he could make his fuel stop anytime after this point in the race and go on the distance.
Well, there's been enough yellows, too, as Bill can stretch it out as long as he wants to. But what you see right now, Bill Webb told us this earlier when I talked to him before the race. If there's a chance to go for the lead as they near the first 100-lap bonus, there's bonus money on lap 100, and Webb's going for it. Webb will take the lead on the 81st lap. You've got a new leader, Frankie.
Into turns 1 and 2, Jeffersonville, Indiana's Bill Webb taking the upper hand now with 18 laps to go before they get that big bonus money. And tell us about that, Scott.
Well, there's a $250 bonus from the Medal Center for the leader of lap 100 and the leader of lap 200. Well, nobody was that worried about it going in. They love the bonus. But the thing is, if you're in contention, if you're going for it at that time, you want to make your move. And Bill said, now's my chance. Great battle for third between Gardner and Winders right now, just behind him. And you can see Gardner on the inside will probably get picked off by the slower car of LeGrand and let Winders hold the spot. But Bill said any time when it starts getting close to that 100, he was going to go for that bonus money. You saw it. Webb's got the lead. Earlier, Walters had the faster car, but Webb has flat put a lot of distance in between the two of them.
So Bill Webb, the new leader of the contest, taking that lead on the about the lap number 81, I believe, was the mark. Bill Webb is once again a former track champion here at Louisville Motor Speedway, and he knows how to win races, knows how to win money too, and it looks like he could be the winner of that first bonus paid at lap number 100. And really it surprises me if Scott Walters had anything for Webb. I believe I'd be a little bit closer to Bill Webb to try to take that lead back. But Webb opens it up about 8 car lengths on the back straightaway, and as much as a lead as anyone has had in this contest. And you see the 77 of Buddy Fannin now moving down the front straightaway. Boy, Fannin's had his problems here early on in the contest as well. At one point, I believe just a few short laps ago, he was still on the lead lap, but for no longer. Out of turn 4, you see the number 77 of Buddy Fannin. In turns 1 and 2, the 99 of Larry Clyer. And then on back, you see the number 8. That's Chuck Winders. That's third place. At 4th, it's Frank Kimmel. And then rounding out the Also in the lineup, the 98 of Keith Gardner in the top 5. And it's Larry Metters running outside of the top 5. Let's zoom in, take a look at Metters. Iroquois Park, Kentucky driver. Albin's Used Cars, sponsored Pontiac. Moving into turns 3 and 4. Two-time Kentucky Asphalt champion and two-time Kentucky Motor Speedway champion, but has yet to find that elusive big win here at Louisville Motor Speedway.
Outstanding action early. You get a good look at Larry right there. And Larry's been hanging in there just out of the top 5 in this race tonight, currently running 6th. And, you know, Preston Ford's having a good run right behind him. And Preston would appear to be 7th at this point, as you've been talking about, Frank. Preston's another guy who we really expect to just try and keep his car together. And let's see what Preston's got left for that final 100 laps. He may be a player in this thing.
Preston Ford has won that International 500 back almost a decade ago at the Fairgrounds Motor Speedway, and this is really a physical, mental type race here. 300 laps, and the cars are as quick as ever. You're going to have reflexes, and you're going to have them for 300 laps. Taking a look back into the field, the number 3 of Marty Belcher. There's the big question mark for the night. Marty hasn't driven a stock car all summer, and about 1 week ago jumped into the ride that Dave Calmer had piloted all summer long. Marty Belcher, can you go 300 laps tonight for Kentucky Clutch Rebuilders and Auburndale Auto Parts and Machine? We'll have to find out as we go 96 into the books, 4 away from that bonus, Scott Douglas.
Yeah, and Bill Webb obviously has really put it together. Now, you again start talking strategy. Scott Walters may have just said let him go and I'll just sit here, or maybe Webb is getting stronger as the night goes on. But certainly from the first 80 laps to what we've seen in the last 20, Bill Webb is looking superb. 2 more laps to go to come around to pick up the first bonus money from the Medal Center tonight. Of course, Bill also got a piece of the qualifying bonus. Medal Center paid bonus money for the top 3 in qualifying, which was claimed by Scott Walters, Bill Webb, and then Chuck Winders. Now Webb, with 1 more lap to go, is primed to pick up another 250, but there's a little bit of a problem in front of him in that 4th turn. Everybody straightened out, however. I said 4th turn, I meant the 1st turn, as you kind of got Henry Wallace getting back in line. And they're coming, I guess it's 98, so there must be still another lap to go.
Okay, and they click off lap number 99. You're going to watch Bill Webb pick up some bonus money here from the Medal Center as he scoots off turn number 2 and down the back straightaway. Anytime you think of big winners at Louisville Motor Speedway, you think of Bill Webb. Out of turn 4, he'll shuffle it off turn number 4 and pick up the bonus money as he scoots off into turns 1 and 2. Here's our 100-lap rundown at the 33% complete mark. It's Bill Webb of Jeffersonville, Indiana, our current leader. Iroquois Park, Kentucky, Scott Walters runs at 2nd. At 3rd from Pleasure Ridge Park, car number 8, Chuck Winders. Also from Iroquois Park, the 98 of Keith Gardner going 4th. And rounding out the top 5, Clarksville, Indiana's Frank Kimmel. And you notice some of that speedy dry that they're going through in the turns on longer distance races. This is what they used to do at the Fairgrounds Speedway. At the century marks, they would throw speedy dry out onto the track to help the adhesion on the track.
You can see him right there, Carl, as he just kind of passed up. Back in the turn, there's the track official, or excuse me, someone down there throwing the speedy dry out there. I can't identify him right off, but you can see him indeed. Bang, there he is, throwing it right out there. Frank picked that up very quickly, but indeed, they got the speedy dry out there at the 100-lap mark.
Looks like it might have been Sam Price. Mad at somebody or something. I don't know.
That is Mike Claywell, one of the track officials out there taking care of it. And they got it down. And indeed, well, these are things that we're not used to seeing, but there's something. There's a spin in the turn.
Trouble up in turn number 4. Leonard Blanchard Jr. scooting his Ford Thunderbird down to the bottom side of the racetrack. And that incident up in turn number 4 brings out the caution flag at lap 105. So after 105 laps of competition and very much speedy dry put on the track.
Now let's see if anybody goes to the pits, Frank Scott.
There is your 100-lap mark, and a lot of drivers want to probably make stops here as our beautiful Tri-City Oldsmobile pace car picks up the leader. Bill Webb will again watch for pit stops here, and it'll be interesting to see who takes on fuel and perhaps maybe even a set of tires. It's a little hard to gauge what will happen here, but they are inside that window where the fellows with the larger fuel cells can actually go the distance if they take their fuel now. And then you see the once again the safety car out front leading the field into turns 1 and 2. 3 and 4. And there you see Leonard Blanchard Jr. He comes in, although I do not expect, I believe they're just checking on that automobile. You see Steve Webb in the 0-1. He's coming in. Relief driver standing by for Steve Webb. It will be E.J. Schweitzer. Schweitzer should Steve Webb decide to change drivers. And it looks as though they are preparing. They are pulling fenders away from the tires. It looks like crew chief Buddy Webb has put some cranks on the weight jack there on the rear of the automobile to try and settle that car down, get it a little bit tighter. The number 69 of Bill Kimmel Jr. pulling into the pit area, and they are going for fuel. So it's Bill Kimmel Jr. Who leads the thirsty bunch onto pit road here at Louisville Motor Speedway. You can see the flashlights flashing around the tail of the car. They are taking on fuel. So Bill Kimmel Jr. is the first to become one of the thirsty bunch out there tonight. Taking on the fuel there. And he pulls away. Car number 69, the John Jones GM City sponsored IROC Camaro, will attempt to time some of these pit stops as well. 108 laps into the books. Bill Webb told me earlier tonight, anytime after lap number 80, you could expect his stop. Oldsmobile safety car down into the infield. We'll go back green flag racing here shortly as the field picks up the RPMs down in turns 3 and 4. It's Bill Webb, the hurrying Hoosier, out of turn number 4 and gets up through the gearbox in a hurry. They're down into turns 1 and 2 in front of the VIP luxury suites. The number 3 of Marty Belcher. Whoa, more trouble up in turn number 1. Prospect Kentucky's Henry Wallace, and the number 8 of Chuck Winders is collected. Boy, one of the top running automobiles. He was running at third just before this incident as the field comes back under caution. So Chuck Winders, the 1989 late model champion here at Louisville Motor Speedway, meets a problem up in turns 1 and 2 with Henry Wallace in car number 71.
And it appeared he went a lap down sitting there too, Frank. And again, these laps counting under yellow. Chuck gets back in line about where he was, but now a big problem for Winders. He's a lap down, and at the 110 mark, we'll see if he can regain that lap. Chuck Winders, conservative early on. Now, Frank, does he have to go all out with everything he's got to try and reclaim a lap?
He's done that pretty much in 1989 all season long, going all out, getting those fast qualifying times, 15, I believe, out of 20 weeks there. Chuck Winders knows how to do it, and I believe he knows where he's at and what he has to do. You know, crew chief Todd Hash is in the pit area, and they're ready to do whatever it takes to win this 1989 Metal Center Bluegrass 300. We'll be back with more action. Oldsmobile safety car down onto the infield area as we switch back up into Channel 1 audio-wise. The field comes out of turn number 4, and we're back under green in the Metal Center Bluegrass 300. And it's Bill Webb leading the field off into turns 1 and 2. Veteran stock car driver Marty Belcher a lap down to the field, but right there on Bill Webb's back bumper. Scott Walters currently goes second. At third, it's the number 98 now of Keith Gardner. The number 8 of Chuck Winders a lap down, but amongst the leaders right now. And you'll have to include the number 28 of Frank Kimmel, who runs at fourth. And then rounding out the top 5, car number 20, Preston Ford. Who'd have thunk it?
Well, yeah, I think you did, Frank, and several others talking about Preston. This is a guy who's going to hang in this race. A good race car, good driver, good team, smart, conservative, been there before. Preston's going to be a player in this race if the equipment holds together. There's no doubt, I don't think, in any of our minds. But maybe it is a bit of a surprise to see him before the halfway mark in the top 5, and he is flat running with Frank Kimmel. This is a battle for fourth on the racetrack as it goes right now. Larry Metters, also the only other car that I am sure is on the lead lap in 6th.
Scott Douglas, who else more than Preston Ford needs a big win here at Louisville Motor Speedway for his portfolio?
Well, he's had so many ups and downs this year, but what a boost this would be. And now he gets heat from Larry Metters as Metters wants in the top 5, and lap traffic is playing a role. Great battle, and Metters is around Preston Ford. But Preston, I don't think, is ready to go to war for that spot just yet.
You see the number 20 just ease past Prospect Kentucky's Henry Wallace, going 3 wide here on this front straightaway. Preston Ford knows what it's all about, and he'll hook up to the rear bumper there of Larry Metters, try to pull himself around Keith Storms going into turns 1 and 2. 121 laps in the books. Preston Ford, PJE Racing Enterprises, Coyle Chevrolet sponsored IROC Camaro, looking tough after the first 100 laps here. 122 now in the books as they come out of turn number 2 and down the back straightaway. JB's Body Shop keeping the colors on the car this season. We check around the speedway and we see car number 1, Bill Webb, as he comes off turn 2 down the back straightaway, and again opening up that 6 to 7 car length advantage on Scott Walters. Keith Gardner in the car number 98. Currently going at third. There's a good look at the number 98 there. Barley Ford, by far the best. Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe. Down the back straightaway, Keith Gardner. Boy, would it be a feather in his hat to win the Louisville 150 and then come back and get the Metal Center Bluegrass 300.
And he's staying in it. He's definitely a contender. But, Frank, my question right now is to you, are Bill Webb and Scott Walters that much faster, or are they just using more of their race car right now than a Gardner, a Metters, or a Preston Ford?
Well, Bill Webb and Scott Walters have never been asked to go much more than, say, 100 laps. They don't know what they're getting into after 125 laps. Now, you look back in this lineup and you'll see a Keith Gardner who has run in so many international 500s, ASA Limited Late Model Circuit, the 28 of Frank Kimmel, and Somerset, Kentucky's Jack Cornett just bought some of that outside retaining wall on the back straightaway. Those drivers have known how to go these longer distance races. Bill Webb and Scott Walters, after 128 laps now, and Jack Cornett, you see the fireworks from underneath his car. You can't tell them how to go 300 laps. They're just doing what they do best, and that's lead races.
Well, you're right about that. And heading down the back straightaway now, Bill and his brother Steve, he'll hook up beside of him, and Scott Walters will go. And he gets around Steve as well fairly easily at that point. But, you know, those guys are going all out right now and really letting it hang out. And they've got a good groove going. They're trying to work through lap traffic. But I think they've settled into a good groove just like Gardner has. And Chuck Winders obviously believes that on the caution is where he now has to rest his hopes on getting that lap back. Chuck has not pushed any of the top three. He is still going to run his race and look for a spot to pick that lap back up.
I believe that's where Chuck Winders is going to have to rely on Todd Hash to win this race for him. He'll have to do it in the pit stop sequence to get back onto the lead lap somehow. The number 8, fine firefighter for the city of Louisville, who lives in Pleasure Ridge Park, Kentucky. His Custom Concepts truck van conversion sponsored automobile as he comes out of turn number 4 and down the front straightaway into turns 1 and 2. It's Frank Kimmel right behind him there, the number 28. The 28 car, Frank Kimmel, out of Southern Indiana, currently rolls at 4th on the field. Larry Metters rounds out that top 5. 134 in the books. And once again, the fast bunch could become the thirsty bunch at any moment. Jack Cornett of Somerset, his Monfreed Optical Superstores Pontiac, getting on fresh new tires, and he's back into the contest as well. For the remainder of the contest, you may not see Cornett take on any tires, but perhaps he'll have to take on fuel. Scott Douglas.
Yeah, and the leader had trouble getting around him is Bill Webb. And on the back straightaway, turn 2, Larry Metters is spun. He got hooked up with Preston Ford, and Metters is now sitting in the speed bumps, and he's about to be lapped by the leader, Bill Webb. So a bad break for Metters, who is running 5th, put Preston Ford at 5th as those two hooked up, and Metters is left in the infield.
And we avoided a caution flag period. We're still under green. So Larry Metters, once in the top 5, has bounced out of the top 5 now, and Preston Ford shows up on the leaderboard at position number 5 on the field. You can almost expect, I guess, in a 300-lap race that some form of misfortune may strike all 5 top running cars.
Yeah, and that's where we're trying to watch some of these other guys. I'm not sure, and I'll try to check the status of Bill Kimmel Jr. As to whether he's a lap down. I'm not sure. He had some problems earlier. I don't know if he saved his lap. Same thing with Keith Storms. Well, Storms is definitely down now. So there may be only 5 cars on this lead lap. The only other guy, and as I see him go by, I think Steve Webb's a lap down. He is definitely. Junior's a lap down. So I think you're down to about 5 on the lead lap right now. And so, at least for the moment, those are your major players. But Winders and Metters are just 1 lap down. And we're not even to the halfway point yet. You can't count those guys out yet.
Regardless of where Bill Kimmel Jr. might be, perhaps on the not on the lead lap, but a lap down, he's already taken on his first fuel stop. So that's something to consider, too. Although a lap down, it could put him a lap up when these other guys have to make their stops. So you can't count Bill Kimmel Jr. out of it.
Same thing with Buddy.
Trouble up in turns 3 and 4. One car hitting the outside retaining wall extremely hard. Just caught it out of the corner of my eye. And somebody has hit that tractor tire barrier very, very hard. It's the 1979 Fairgrounds Motor Speedway late model champion and former Sportsdrome champion Keith Storms hitting the outside retaining wall in his B&R Speed Shop, Engine Parts Warehouse, and Stebbins Auto Parts Pontiac Trans Am. The 74, unfortunately, Brian Baum also involved in it looks like there was some minor damage to that car. Okay, and it looks like, Scott Douglas, you got a comment.
Well, I think it's pit stop time now for sure. 143 laps in. Now they'll pick up the pace car this next time around. It looks like this is going to be a lengthy caution. I think here's where you'll see your pit stops. Everybody, I think, is going to watch what Bill Webb. Scott Walters is already definitely coming to the pits. So is Bill Webb. Let's keep our eyes, Carl, keep it trained on the pits. And Frank, you know, and I don't do this very often, but we're going to call a pit stop right now. You take Webb, I'll take Walters on the clock.
Down on the pit road, Bill Webb gets to his pit area first, and then Scott Walters. We'll keep them both in the cameras, and you can see on the bottom half of your screen, it's Bill Webb, the 1988 late model division champion, and car number 5, Scott Walters, who just has a super season each and every year here at Louisville Motor Speedway. They're side by side into the pit area. Bill Webb taking on fuel there, Buddy Webb, the crew chief on the automobile, and just to the top of your screen, you see Billy Harris taking on the putting the fuel in the Scott Walters automobile. So it looks like Bill Webb gets a good, clean stop. Scott Walters getting back underway here, although it looks like Keith Gardner may be blocking the exit to pit road. And this is costing them positions on the racetrack, especially that restarting lineup. So it looks like Bill Webb gets into the pits and out in 29 seconds. 29.47 is what we had on Bill Webb. And Scott Douglas will be back into the announce booth here shortly, and he'll let me know how long it took Scott Walters to take his fuel load on, but then he couldn't get back onto the racetrack. So we'll have to find out what happens with the Harris Racing crew here shortly. We're under caution. We'll take a break in the action. Speedway, and one of the other top 5 running automobiles, the number 20 of Preston Ford, is down on the pit road. He's taking his fuel stop at this current time. Doesn't look like there'll be any tire changing going on this time around, but Preston's been in the pit area going to the second dump can now after 24 seconds. Nothing like the Webb crew did. Buddy Fannin pulling away. He's been in and out of the pit area several times, but Preston Ford now going to that second dump can. Once again, a top 5 running car. He's down and away in 36.88 seconds. 36.88 for Preston Ford. We'll have more of the Metal Center Bluegrass 300 after this break in the action. Back under green here at Louisville Motor Speedway in the 1989 Bluegrass 300, the Metal Center Bluegrass 300. Unofficially, car number 98, Keith Gardner, is the leader coming out of turn number 4. At second, it's Scott Walters in car number 5. Going third, the 28 of Frank Kimmel. At fourth, they are posting the number 20 of Preston Ford. And rounding out the top 5, the number 1 of Bill Webb. And Scott Douglas?
A lot of things going on during that last pit stop. Now, the Belcher car, the number 3 car, the 8 car of Winders, the 05 of Metters all stayed out on that caution. What that means, as I'm reading it, is that when they pulled them all back around and decided to pick the leader back up, again, this is unofficial, it's just the way I see it, and I'm trying to interpret as we go, but I believe that Chuck Winders, Larry Metters, and Marty Belcher are now all back on the lead lap and definitely in contention. I'm trying to find out if that's exactly the way it is, but as for right now, as you and I call it, I think we ought to call it with those guys on the lead lap.
Bill Webb's on the lead lap, Scott, but he was assessed a penalty. Let's explain that one to the race fans.
Okay, and as we were calling the pit stops, you may have noticed it, but when Bill Webb came out, there was, and in Bill's defense, you know, this is new, but there was a red stop sign up. Bill came out. I don't think he intentionally meant any malice by it at all. He's just trying to get back out on the racetrack. But he did run the red stop sign. They penalized him to the complete tail of the restart. That's why Bill is now 5th.
Okay, so that's the way they look, and we got the 27 of Jack Cornett and Junior Blankenship in there as well.
I think Chuck Winders is now 6th and trying to reel in the leaders. The number 8 of Chuck Winders is now 6th and definitely back in this race, but he's got to have another caution, Frank. I don't think anybody's going to try and go 300 laps, do you?
Oh, definitely not. He's got to stop for gas. We asked him before the start of the race. He says he can only go 200 laps on the fuel.
But what has happened here is he has made his lap back. Again, if we're interpreting what's going on correctly. So what Chuck has now is the next yellow of any length. Chuck and Belcher and Metters can pit and then come right back out on the tail of the lead lap, then try to work their way back up front and have a chance to win.
That's exactly right. So they have inherited a lead lap position on the racetrack, but not among the leaders of the race. So that's the way we're looking at it right now after 167 laps. Again, we'll give you the rundown. The number 98, Keith Gardner, got out front on that Louisville 150 and won that earlier this season. Looking good for the Bluegrass. The number 5 of Scott Walters runs at second. At third, it's Frank Kimmel. Going fourth, Preston Ford. And then rounding out the top 5, Bill Webb, car number 1.
One more note to close out that last pit stop, because that really may have been the most critical point of this stock car race. Did you notice that it appeared Scott Walters and Billy Harris very calmly did everything they wanted to do and took a 45-second stop, which to me says full tank. I didn't see anybody else stay nearly that long, and I wonder if a Gardner or a Webb got a full tank or if they need it. That's a question that may be answered later, but I'm sure Walters got a full tank, and I know the Harris crew thinks it can go all the way. We'll see if the others can.
Scott Walters added 15 gallons of racing fuel. He was just about out, I would have said. Bill Webb was not out. He had a huge tank in his car, only needed 1 can. And now he can go the rest of the way. So they're in good shape now so far as pit stops go. They won't have to stop again for fuel. But again, that big question is Chuck Winders. He'll have to stop. Marty Belcher will have to stop, and Larry Metters. They have put themselves back onto the lead lap, but they will have to stop at one point.
Yeah, and without a yellow, Frankie, they're going to have to stop on a green. We're already to lap 172. How far can they go?
Well, I tell you what, it's really tough to say. They can go probably 220 given the earlier caution flags. They could probably go 220 laps given those caution flags. You know, what got me was that the Webb, they only had to use the 1 dump can, had a 29-second pit stop, but that all went away when he ran the stop sign. So that could have really worked out to been something if he had not jumped the stop sign there.
Yeah, indeed. But you're right. The biggest thing there was that, and you very aptly pointed it out, that to top his tank off took less than it did for Scott Walters because he was in the situation that he was with the gas tank size and the ability to go to that point. So you made a very good point, Frank, about Webb only needing 1 can. Well, we'll see if he can pick up any more spots. He's back up to 3rd.
Yeah, he had a bunch of fuel to begin with, probably 25 to 30% more. Looks like we got a battle for position going into turns 1 and 2, Scott Douglas.
And it looks like Chuck Winders wants to see that 8 back on the leaderboard. It'll be interesting. Now, if Chuck gets around Preston Ford, we'll see if the scorers are reading this race the same way I am, and if Chuck Winders' number goes back up, because he has reeled Preston Ford in, and I think he's about to try and take him.
But once again, the difference being Preston Ford does not need any more fuel. Chuck Winders will have to stop, so we'll have to see what happens should he get around. And Preston Ford's going to grab a spot going into turns 1 and 2, looking to the inside of Frank Kimmel, and they are side by side. I tell you, Scott Douglas, this is the best Preston Ford has looked all year, and 174 laps or 79 into the books here. Preston Ford is showing what he's made out of here. Loves those long races.
And he just took 4th away from Frank Kimmel, and Chuck Winders is trying to take 5th away from him. Winders is inside of Kimmel, and now I'm waiting to see when they straighten the scoreboard if they indeed decide to post the 8 and 5th. That's the way we're seeing the race. All right, another point, we'll get back to that in a minute. We're 20 laps away from another Medal Center bonus, so Bill Webb looking for another $250 chunk of change. It's on the line for the leader of lap number 200. Another bonus, or excuse me, Keith Gardner's trying to get that bonus. Now, another bonus that's going to come into play over this last 100 is the $500 bonus for most laps led. Gardner's getting a bunch in now. Webb led a bunch. Walters led a bunch. We're going to have to get the calculators out to figure that one a little later.
So, after earlier this evening, Scott Walters getting a big bonus for getting the pole position, Bill Webb getting a bonus at lap number 100. It could be Keith Gardner's turn to dig into John Fellinall's bank account a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, and Gardner's got 17 laps to go to pick himself up that 200-lap bonus. It'll be $250 for the leader of lap 200. Gardner running strong, and Scotty knows where that bonus is, too. Scott Walters, of course, who I'm talking about. He's not really up there right now, but if he can reel him in a little bit in lap traffic, might make a couple of moves to try and pick the cash up. Chuck Winders is going for Preston Ford, and if I'm right, this is for 4th place.
In the middle of the back straightaway, going into turns 3 and 4, Preston just says, let him go. He's got to stop for gas at one time or another. And Chuck Winders perhaps has moved into a top 4 position here. Scott Douglas has left the press box area to check with the scores to see exactly what the firefighters' status is at this point in the contest. 186 in the books. Your leader is the number 98, Keith Gardner, in the Barley Ford, by far the best Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe. Sponsored as well by Kentuckiana Auto Trim and Pike Racing Chassis, with Auburndale Auto Parts and Machines supplying the horsepower under the hood. Moving into turns 3 and 4 now. The number 5 of Scott Walters, his Roadrunner Video Club, Conover's Body Shop, IROC Z28, currently goes second. Into turns 1 and 2. At third, it's the number 1 of Bill Webb in the Budget Rent-A-Car and Truck Charlie Seafood Restaurant. And there's trouble on car number 8, Chuck Winders, going into turns 1 and 2. And what started out to be a bad night has gotten worse for the 1989 late model champion Chuck Winders, as the caution flag is displayed at lap number 189. what could happen here is Gardner could actually pick that bonus money up while the field is under caution, Scott Douglas.
Oh, goodness, what a bad break for Chuck Winders. And there you see it. His hopes of winning this event are gone, sitting right on the back straightaway. He'll take nothing away from an incredible year, but you know he wanted to cap it. You know, I've kind of termed this as our Super Bowl. Well, it is our Super Bowl in the fact that it's the longest and richest race we run. It is not in determining our champion. There he is. Chuck Winders is the champ, but this is not his night. It's going to go to somebody else.
And you can see the numbers on the scoreboard, and perhaps if Carl Blanton can ease up there. You see the number 98 at lap number 191. Keith Gardner, a veteran of many 300 and 500 lap races, finds himself out front and only 9 laps away from a big bonus from the Medal Center here. Scott Douglas, what's the prize money here?
Well, it's $250, and they'll pay it if he leaves that lap, whether it's yellow or green. They're ready to go, and it's going to be green cash either way, and Gardner's about to take a bonus.
Okay, we've got activity down on pit road, and it's Marty Belcher, car number 3, pulling into the pit area. And the crew chief on the car is Dave Culmer, along with Kenny Warner, and I believe they're going to work on the car. As we see several people checking the tire wear for the outside and taking on that fuel load at the 192 lap mark, so he'll be able to go the distance as well.
Medder's changing tires. That's interesting. They've got to get back out in front of the pace car. Medders will make it. Gets a green. He's out. Here comes Belcher. He's out. They are still on the lead lap, so that's why they stayed out last time. Now they have all the fuel they need, but Frank, they'll have to come from the back of the pack still. Medders and Belcher are now firmly back in the middle of this event. There's Winders in the pits. What a bad break. They'll try and get Chuck back out. Obviously, this race pays well all the way through, and Chuck wants to finish as strong as he can, but he's losing several laps here. It looks like, depending on when they get him back out, he may lose 5, 6, 7 laps or more.
Although Dave Culmer is no longer in the driver's seat of the number 3, he is doing everything he can to see that Marty Belcher has a fighting chance in this race, and he's just recorded the fastest stop on pit road, 23.62 seconds for Dave Culmer and the Kenny Warner crew on the Kentucky Clutch Rebuilders IROC Camaro. We'll have more racing action from the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway, in the 1989 Bluegrass 300 after this break in the action. To go back, green flag racing here in the 1989 Bluegrass 300, brought to you by the Medal Center. Into turns 1 and 2, and I tell you, somebody can get down to 7100 grade lane real fast. Is that number 98, Keith Gardner, 4 laps away from the bonus, and Scott Walters is right on his tail there, Scott Douglas.
Yeah, Scotty knows this coming close to bonus lap money, and if he gets a shot, he'll take a crack at him, and Bill Webb is right back in there. Penalty notwithstanding, now he's overcome that. Okay, some other things. Chuck Winders appeared to me to lose 6 laps. He may have lost 7 in the pits. So while Winders is going to stay out there and try and run and finish as well as he can, he certainly is not going to be the winner here unless some real weird things happen. All right, actually just a little over a lap to go, and that'll be when Gardner's able to pick up that Medal Center bonus. Doesn't look like Walters is going to challenge him for it. Looks like Scotty's strategy is the bonus money I want is the one they post on lap 300. That's the $3,000 first prize.
And the bonus money Chuck Winders wants, he'll have to wait for at the Executive West in January. Barley Ford, by far the best, clicks off lap number 200. And Keith Gardner out of Iroquois Park, Kentucky, is the leader at the 66% mark. Lap now in the books. The number 5 of Scott Walters back at second. Bill Webb and car number 1 goes third. At fourth, Preston Ford. And rounding out the top 5, it looks like the number 28 of Frank Kimmel, perhaps, or is Larry Medders now in there?
Medders, I believe, is now 5th on the field, and indeed he's being posted. And my buddy over here, Jeff Greer, the promoter at Kentucky Motor Speedway, knows a little bit about racing himself, and he said, hey, did you watch the pits? Medders was the one guy who took on new rubber. And look at Larry. He looks very, very fast right now. He's got some distance to cover, but the best tires on the track belong to that man, Larry Medders. And if he could come back and win it, Frank, you know what it would do for that team that struggled so hard all year.
Be the tail of the tape, I'll tell you that right now. And the 05 will whiz off turn number 2 and down the back straightaway. Albin's Used Cars, sponsored Pontiac Trans Am, scoots into turns 3 and 4. Scott Douglas will have him on the clock this time around. We'll find out just how fast that 2-time Kentucky asphalt champion, 2-time Kentucky Motor Speedway track champion, Larry Medders is here at the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway. Brings the Malcolm Brothers Pontiac out of turn 4 and down and across the start-finish line. And where's he at, Scott Douglas? Looks like a 14.19.
We'll check the leaders and see how that compares, but 14.19 in race conditions is an excellent lap.
And there's Metters up into turns 3 and 4. And again, at the century mark, we find the speedy dry being added to the track. Hope it does not confuse the drivers too much. Helps loosen up those tires, but we'll find out. And there you see one of our track attendants down there, and that's Mike Claywell, putting a little clay of his own out on the nation's finest short track here down into turns 1 and 2. Driver change in 77. That was interesting on that last round of stops at nearing the 200 lap mark. And the number 77 no longer has the veteran Buddy Fannin in it, but now the car now driven by Mike Garvey of Brooks, Kentucky, originally out of Michigan. So Mike Garvey at one point was really threatening for a top finish, got sidelined in his original car, now driving the 77, also prepared out of A1 Engineering in Brooks, Kentucky, and the magnificent A. Arnold crew chiefing that automobile. There's Preston Ford in the number 20 in there as well. And again, as we glance at the leaderboard, you see drivers that are used to going 3, 4, 500 lap contests. And those numbers are the 98 of Keith Gardner, the number 20 of Preston Ford, and the 05 of Larry Metters. This is their kind of race. As they continue to circle the Louisville Motor Speedway, 211 in the books. All the top players in this contest have taken on their needed fuels. Whoa, trouble up in turns 1 and 2. 2 cars involved, and it's the number 3 of Marty Belcher, one of the top running cars, and I believe the 74 of Brian Baum. Unfortunately, buying a piece of that outside retaining wall. Looks like an engine let go.
Yes, it did. It really did. A bad break for Marty Belcher. Now, the most interested guy on this stop, Frank Kimmel, just went a lap down to the leaders. What will Frank do? Obviously, he's got a problem. He's going to go in for fuel, tires, or will he try and stay out if the others go in? Boy, you see Brian fishtailing as he got into that oil. This is going to take a little bit of cleanup. If there's anybody who's unsure on fuel, Frank, he's going in the pits. And Frank Kimmel is pulling right up beside the leader. He's got behind the pace car. The reason he's doing that, Frank's obviously headed down pit row. We'll see who else goes as lap 213 just went on the board.
Two-time Charlestown Motor Speedway track champion, finishing well in the region here of the NASCAR points a couple of years back. He is the Kentucky Asphalt champion from a year ago, the number 28 of Frank Kimmel down on pit road. And it looks like the JDC Cable Television Company, Tomcat Motorsports, and College Shop pit crew will go to work.
Well, this is another experienced crew. Terry Shirley and the guys. Terry, an ASA veteran. Frank's had a great year. He won the championship at Kentucky Motor Speedway. And he, like Chuck Winders, will go to the Nashville banquet. He finished 8th in the region. Now, this is costing him some time right here, but he has not lost a lap as of yet, if I'm right. Although maybe he did. We'll have to check for sure. He was already a lap down, so Frank is having some problems here. He's hoping, obviously, new rubber, new fuel, and he'll be ready to go. Now, in the pits, again, Buddy Fannin appears to be going back into his car, and Garvey has come out. That's what you're seeing now. Garvey has popped out of the 77 car. I think Fannin is back in. Here comes Kimmel back out on the tail, and we'll see if he lost any more additional time in the pits. All the leaders staying out. It seems obvious to me that Gardner, Walters, Webb, Preston Ford, and Metters all plan on going the rest of the way. One more note, Frank. I was running the time clock, and Metters was not appreciably faster than Gardner or Scott Walters. So that's interesting to note because we talked about the new rubber. However, Metters is, if you take out, 2-lap cars in between where he and Preston are, so certainly those guys are still very much in it. But at this point, you've got to figure Gardner, Walters, and Webb may be the ones ready to decide this thing. They look so strong.
Scott Douglas, I mean, honestly, when we talked about this race all week long here at Louisville Motor Speedway, did you honestly think after 215 laps we'd have the front 5 cars nearly bumper to bumper?
I really would. You wondered about it, and indeed, that's a tribute to these teams and the competitiveness here all season long. Hey, Chuck Winders had a great year, but he didn't dominate like a Larry Phillips did to win the championship down in Missouri, or like maybe a Mike Love has done in Georgia, or Robert Powell last year to win the championship nationally in South Carolina. You know, Chuck was the strongest guy, no doubt about it, but on any given night, you could throw a blanket over 10 to 12 cars that could have won a race, and we're seeing that here tonight with this many guys still in contention, and really anybody on that leaderboard is a solid shot to win this thing. And I don't think, as I look back, with the possible exception of Bill Kimmel Jr. and maybe Steve Webb, no one else would seem to me to be less than a lap down. So I think you're seeing these guys that are ready to decide this thing are the 5 on the leaderboard. And again, maybe with some strange things happening, a Kimmel Jr. or a Steve Webb could get back in the fray, because I don't think they're any more for sure than 2 laps down, and maybe only 1.
Just saw a closed-in shot there No, that wasn't Northeastern Modified veteran Reggie Ruggiero. That was car number 8, Chuck Winters, here at Louisville Motor Speedway. And things get a little violent out there while you're trying to go to the front in this Bluegrass 300, brought to you by the Metal Center. And believe me, a lot of metal has been cast away out there, and perhaps it'll wind up over on 7100 Grade Lane here in Louisville, Kentucky, as we take a break in the action at the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway. 223 laps now complete in the Metal Center Bluegrass 300 as Mike Harwood waves that green flag and Keith Gardner sends them on their way into turns 1 and 2. It's Gardner on the back straightaway. The number 5 of Scott Walters rides second. At third, the number 1 of Bill Webb. And then on back, there's 2 lapped cars, and then a great battle back at 4th and 5th. Larry Metters and Preston Ford racing side by side. Shades of the late 1970s in stock car action around Kentuckiana.
Well, that's a great battle, too, for the spot. And Metters picks it up, and I was really impressed with the way he picked it up, despite the fact that the lap Ford Thunderbird of Leonard Blanchard Jr. was there. Metters was not going to be denied. Larry wants to get up with that front 4. He thinks he's got the car to go the distance and pull this thing out. What a great win it would be if he could do it. But he's got 3 tough Chargers in front of him. And, you know, we've talked about a lot of people, but Keith Gardner at Byerly Ford Thunderbird. You know, we talked about consistency and experience and those kind of things playing into this race. And a lot of us had Keith Gardner near the top of our list of favorites, and you can see why. He's leading this thing at lap 228, and he looks strong.
It's a mere 72 laps to go before we throw a checkered flag on this one. And they've laid down a lot of speedy dry down in turns 1 and 2. And I don't believe the outside is where you want to be going in turns 1 and 2. So maybe we'll see the passing occur on the backstretch in turns 3 and 4 until they feel a little bit more confident with the turn 1 area. Let's check with the leaders, and they're out of turn 4. Down the front straightaway, Keith Gardner clicks off lap number 30 and moves into turns 1 and 2. And he's got Scott Walters right there with him, the number 5. And then the Red Whirl Racing engine under the number 1 of Bill Webb as they click off lap number 231 here. A mere 70 to go.
What I want to see over these last few laps as Walters really gets up on Gardner. Scotty was decidedly faster. He shattered the track record in qualifying. So Bill Webb was under it. And Gardner was not up there with them. But I'm going to tell you, Metters, looks like Metters is slowing as they come down the front straightaway and into turn 1, I'm sorry. Metters is slowing decidedly. And my goodness, Frank, what else can you say? I'll get back to that other point, but you just got to bow your head for Larry and them. They've run so hard, and I still believe there'll be a day when they're back on top, but 1989 just has not been their year.
He pulls down on the pit road. Earlier had the fresh tires on the car. The car started misfiring in the middle of the back straightaway. Preston Ford was able to gain back the top 4th place position on the field right then. So let's see. It's interesting to see. Metters is on pit road now, well over 15 seconds here. And it just doesn't look like it's going to be Larry Metters' kind of night once again here in 1989. Interesting sight on that scoreboard inside the top 5.
Well, Keith Gardner leading the race at this point. And again on Scott Walters, the last point I wanted to make, Harris and Walters got together and set that thing up to qualify. Did they, or what kind of adjustments did they make before the race? Did it take, because now you're getting close to when it is going to be a sprint, when speed is going to figure back in. Fuel mileage is no longer going to matter. And in the late stages, the fastest car, if these 3 stay this close, the fastest car is going to win it. Is it now Gardner, or can one of these other 2 get around him?
We've been blessed with a real cool night here at Louisville Motor Speedway. The heat out on the racetrack shouldn't be a factor here. It's a nice, cool autumn night here in Louisville, Kentucky. And we have to ask ourselves this, too, amongst those top 3s. The 98, Keith Gardner, has all the experience. But the 21-year-old driver in car number 5, Scott Walters, has the youth going for him, as well as the number 1 of Bill Webb. He's about 27, 28 years old there. So, could fatigue play into these final 60 or so laps?
Good question. Excellent question right there. But I'm going to tell you, these 3 guys are athletes, and they're in great shape. Let's talk about something else. And I'm going to tell you right now, Keith Gardner is one whale of a race car driver, and he's a great talent. So I want to say that before I make this other statement, because we've been talking about Gardner's experience, and it is a great advantage. He's a very talented driver. But the 5 and the 1, just like Gardner, are great talents. And while Gardner is still at the top, he has seen some great days in the 70s and on through the 80s, and it looks like we'll go into the 90s. But you may be looking at guys who may be at the top of some racing division somewhere, and who knows, it may be all the way at the top when you start getting around the year 2000. I'm talking about guys like Walters and Webb, who've got a lot of racing left to go under their belts.
That's the number 5 in your picture and the number 1, Bill Webb, as they move into turns 3 and 4. But they're sheep right now, and they're following the shepherd, Keith Gardner, into turns 1 and 2. And it looks as though Webb may have one of the fastest cars of the 3. He's been able to duck outside, duck inside on Scott Walters. He wants Walters. Question is, when will he pick him off?
Yeah, and when will Scotty try Keith Gardner? Because he's got to. But you got to remember, and these guys know it, they see that scoreboard lap counter. They're still not even inside a normal feature, and you know what can happen in one of the 30-lap features every week. Still a world of time, and Larry Metters is in trouble again as he goes down another lap to the leaders. Webb, however, does not want to wait any longer. Bill wants to get in that second spot so he can be the one to challenge Gardner late. I think right now, that's the main thing Walters is trying to do, is stay in that second spot. One other thing to note, they're posting Frank Kimmel back at the number 5 spot. If indeed he is 5th, he's a lap down. But if he is 5th, tip your hat to Terry Shirley and the crew. With a possible second only to that stop by Dave Comer, Marty Belcher earlier, Kimmel had a sensational pit stop under that last yellow, saved himself another lap, and that's why they post him 5th right now.
My hat's off to Buddy Ralph, too, continuing to engineer that car, trade in the good help to keep the JDC Cable Television Company Racing Pontiac up where it belongs among the leaders, and that's where he's showing up on the leaderboard right now. Terrific battle off turn number 2 and down the back straightaway. Scott Walters is going to work on Keith Gardner. Will he have him wore out by 300 laps of this contest now? And as it falls, coming in now with 50 laps to go, will he wear out Gardner by then?
And what's Webb going to do? Because Bill keeps peeking up. Bill does not want to be 3rd. That's the last place in the world Bill wants to be. He can't battle for the lead. I'm sure he doesn't think until he can get around Scott Walters. Walters wants Gardner. What a dandy race with 50 laps still to go in the Metal Center Bluegrass 300. Our friends at WMZ also involved, and you know everybody excited about the way this thing is coming down to the final 50 laps with 3 outstanding race cars battling for the lead, and Preston Ford running his consistent race in 4th, saying, hey, y'all make a mistake, it's mine.
And that just might be the ticket, because they're starting to throw punches out there on that racetrack going around the turns, and you can see Scott Walters bumping on Keith Gardner, telling him, hey, I want some of that lead. I want to pass you because I got the guy on my tail that knows how to win these things too, and that's Bill Webb. And they go bumper to bumper again up into turns 3 and 4 and busting down the front straightaway into turns 1 and 2, and it's just almost like ballet out there, Scott Douglas.
Awesome, and I'm going to tell you, if Scott Walters and Bill Webb get around Keith Gardner, my friend, I know they packed a lunch to do it. It is not going to be an easy job. Gardner, the veteran, not only does he have a great car, not only does he have talent, he knows how to use that racetrack. And believe me, friends, right now they're battling for $3,000, and there's nothing friendly out there. They're going to have to go to war to get around Gardner. Keith's driving a great race.
It's the last race of the year. They don't have to put up with each other from week to week anymore either. They got all winter long to make up. And they're down the back straightaway in the number 98 of Keith Gardner, and it looks like Bill Webb is falling back at the 3rd place position. And Scott Douglas, did you see any smoke indicating any problem from Webb?
No, I didn't, but all of a sudden he just dropped several car lengths off the pace. Now it looks like he's back up to speed and is reeling them back in. You know, again, Bill's a great driver. I'll say this knowing that he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it could have just been a bobble. You know, you're now into this territory these guys haven't been before, and Joe Williamson talked about concentration and talked about the fact that you got to keep your mind on everything. It could have just been a bobble by Bill, or there may be something wrong with the car, but right now he's back up to speed.
Oh, he could have been anticipating the 98 and the number 5, 1st and 2nd place, of tangling into a fender bender out there, and it would be a fender bender that he wouldn't want any part of. So maybe his experience is telling him to back off that gas pedal just a little bit now.
40 laps, we're getting now close to just the normal sprint feature, and these guys are ready to go to war. Scott Walters continuing to size up Keith Gardner. I know that Walters is going to try to make a major move. He has just hung in there and not really tested him yet. The question is where? Will he wait till there are 20 laps to go? And how patient can a young driver like Scott Walters, such a hard charger, be? You know he wants to go for it. So does Webb. But let's see if they'll be patient enough to wait maybe another 20 laps and take it down to a 15, 20-lap shootout.
Well, regardless of who wins this one, this will go down as one of Kentuckiana's premier late model classics, as Keith Gardner, car number 98, continues to lead, moving in on second-generation driver Bill Kimmel Jr. down the back straightaway. And talk about tradition, the 96 just ahead of him. That's Leonard Blanchard Jr. His father won the Bluegrass 300 in 1968 back at the old Fairground Speedway. And I believe Leonard Blanchard Jr. will have to wait another year to become a headliner in this great classic.
Well, here comes the lap traffic into play. They double stacked in front of the leaders, and Walters has not tried to take advantage yet. Scotty still playing it very conservatively, and I think Billy Harris may have told him a spot they want to make a move. Webb's going to try Walters. Webb's not going to wait. Webb to the inside in the lap traffic. Frankie, throw a blanket over him.
Out of turn number 4, this crowd has just come alive. It's standing room only here on the front straightaway, and Bill Webb shoots his shot into turns 1 and 2. Looks to the inside of Gardner. He'll run out of racing room as Somerset, Kentucky's Jack Cornett, working the inside portion of the racetrack and just shuts Webb off as they come out of turn number 4. Down the front straightaway, they're back to single file formation, looking now to the outside of the second-generation driver, Bill Kimmel Jr., as they move into turns 3 and 4, Scott Douglas.
Frank, it is so neat to see this entire crowd come to its feet for late model stock car racing, and I think it's really arrived tonight after a couple years here at Louisville Motor Speedway. What a great exhibition, and these fans are into this 300 lapper. You thought these people were going to get a little bored? Hey, they're excited. This is a great race.
Who'd have thunk it? After 267 laps, we've still got a 3-car bumper-to-bumper shootout, NASCAR style here at the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway. Out of turn number 4, it's still Keith Gardner in car number 98. His Byerly Ford, by far the best. Motorcraft Parts and Service, Kentuckiana Auto Trim, and Pike Racing Chassis, powered by an Auburndale Auto Parts and Machine Racing engine, who continues to run at the head of the class here as he clicks off lap number 270 inside the window now. It's a regular 30-lap Saturday night shootout.
Yeah, but they aren't as fresh, and the cars aren't as fresh as normal. Who's got what? 30 laps to go. Let's see when Walters tries to pull the trigger, or is he giving it all he's got? I think Scotty's going to test him and try him hard. Scott's not the kind of guy to settle for second, and Webb's not going to let him settle for anything. That's Gardner's best advantage right now. Webb is going to continue to try and go to war with Walters.
So often, my good friend Rick Irwin said a lot of times that second and third place car will tie themselves up in a battle and let that leader get away, and I'm afraid that's what we're seeing right now. Scott Walters is worried about that screaming yellow zonker in his rearview mirror as they shake the ground out of turn number 4 and work around the outside of Shively, Kentucky's Larry Clyer into turns 1 and 2. Down the back straightaway, and we understand now from one of the spotters there's smoke from the 98 of Keith Gardner.
May be why the 5 is dropping back. One of two reasons. Sometimes a car will speed up when it obviously starts throwing some smoke, and the other reason, Webb and Walters don't want to get caught if they think he's going to blow. They're going to watch that smoke for a few laps. 25 to go. Does Gardner have enough? Can that Kevin Gardner prepared car hold up?
Into turns 1 and 2, it's Keith Gardner. He's got the advantage. He doesn't have to fight the fresh oil maybe coming out from underneath his automobile. He'll pull in on the 77. We understand Buddy Fannin back in the car. Evidently the seat doesn't adjust too well. Into turns 1 and 2, it's still Gardner out front in the 98. Wouldn't it be something if he won both the Louisville 150 and then came back and got the nightcap for the season, the Metal Center Bluegrass 300, and you can see Scott Walters beginning to slip and slide as he gets into the draft of Gardner. But whoa, trouble right off too, watch out. And it looks like our leaders fight their way through. Webb threading the needle, as does Scott Walters, but everybody has to hold their breath after 278 laps.
The crowd again on its feet. What a piece of driving by Keith Gardner, Scott Walters, and Bill Webb. As the 2-lap cars came together, they split the difference and got through them. All right, Walters has been watching. Gardner's opening up his lead. The smoke is not getting any worse, and Webb wants to try a whole bunch of Scott Walters.
And Mike Harwood hasn't reached for that consultation flag yet, so we'll have to continue to watch. Out of turn number 4 and hold our breath perhaps, and the crowd just got on their feet again, and it's Webb to the outside. Car number 1 trying to get around Scott Walters. He keeps the fender up along the outside. They're door handle to door handle into turns 3 and 4 if they had door handles on them. Down the front straightaway, but it's still Scott Walters by a pop rivet moving into turns 1 and 2. Side by side, and the whole while Keith Gardner is getting away from those two guys. It's Webb up to second, but second's not good enough for Webb. Into turns 3 and 4, and the sparks will fly on a hot Saturday night at the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway. Into turns 1 and 2, and it's still Webb showing Scott Walters what he's made out of. And again, lap traffic there. Look out there, Bill Webb. He runs out of racetrack once again. and it looks like Buddy Fannin has to hit the binders as well. But this crowd has just come alive inside the 30 laps to go. Margins 283 on the board. The whole while, this has let Gardner slip away.
Yeah, but Webb had to do it. Bill can't sit in third. Bill wants to win this race. He had to go for Scotty right then. But you're right. Scott's not going to give a thing. And the competitiveness of the two, they fought like the Dickens. It has given Gardner room to race. Now they need to hook up and go after Gardner and not fight each other, but I don't see that coming. Webb wants that spot.
Scott Douglas, do you get the idea? This is a preview for 1990 here at Louisville Motor Speedway. Two guys that won a piece of the rock here at the nation's finest short track. Scott Walters, he's overdue for a season championship in late model division competition, but Bill Webb will be back as well. You can just about count on it.
Absolutely, and you can bet on that. Those two will be strong, but there's so many others you're going to deal in, like Chuck Winders. You know, the defending champ will be back strong. Walters has finished third, second, would like to be first next year. And how about Mr. Consistent, the guy who always seems to come for the big races, the number 98 of Keith Gardner. He is 13 laps from recording the victory in the Metal Center Bluegrass 300, and I think he's going to get the Metal Center lap leader bonus too, Frank.
I tell you what, Scott Douglas, it'll be a storybook finish to the 1989 racing season. Scott Walters, the driver that unseated him from a runner-up position in the point standings. Keith Gardner could be getting his revenge back tonight and collecting a Bluegrass 300 over Scott Walters as they shake the ground and click off lap number 289, coming up on 10 to go. And I just know Kevin Gardner, Denise Gardner, and Jerry Brennan have to be clinching the jack in the pit area and hoping for a final 10 laps here without a confrontation.
A bobble for Bill Webb that time, and Scotty Walters is settled safely again into second. Wanted to take a look at the scoreboard, and now Bill Kimmel Jr. is being posted fifth. You look for a guy who looks likely to pick up the Metal Center $500 bonus for most positions improved. Bill Kimmel Jr. may be your guy.
98 is Gardner into turns 1 and 2 and down the back straightaway. Well, I'll tell you what, old Gregg and John Dowenhauer over at Barley Ford can't be any happier for this driver, the 98 of Keith Gardner, into turns 1 and 2, and I'm sure they're going to look for bigger and better things with him next season here at Louisville Motor Speedway. Scott Walters having an incredible run in car number 5. The Billy Harris crew, they did nothing wrong in this event except run second to Keith Gardner. And how about that Bill Webb? He's shown the most aggression over the final 100 laps here. And you can't leave out Preston Ford, car number 20, sentimental favorite to win this one. Actually, I believe getting set to lose a spot out of turn number 2 and down the back straightaway to Bill Kimmel Jr. But Preston Ford at 4th place. Who'd have thunk it?
About to go inside the final 5 laps for Keith Gardner. The Byerly Ford Thunderbird, number 98, prepared so beautifully by Kevin Gardner. A race car that, look at this, Victory Lane, the Bob Hook Chevrolet, Bachman Chevrolet Louisville 150. Victory Lane, the Kroger Race of Champions with Rick Wilson driving it. And in 4 laps, if he can hold on, he may find Victory Lane in the WAMZ Metal Center Bluegrass 300.
I'm sure we won't have to send any NASCAR officials to him to show him how to pull over there and get his picture made or give any race interviews afterwards. But anything can happen now. With coming up on 3 to go, Scott Walters no longer is going fishing. He is hunting for bear now.
They got to do everything they can, and this could come into play. There's lap traffic right in front of them, and there's down to the final 2 laps. Walters and Webb may gamble in lap traffic. Let's see what happens, Frank. They're into the lap traffic.
Could be a tremendous victory for Pike Racing Chassis. The number 98 scoots into turns 1 and 2 along the bottom side of the racetrack from Leonard Blanchard Jr. Down the back straightaway now with 2 to go. He'll reel in the number 28 of Frank Kimmel. I believe Kimmel will not go another lap down to the leader as the white flag comes out. It's Gardner into turns 1 and 2. Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe, sponsored by Barley Ford, by far the best, as well as Kentuckiana Auto Trim, Pike Racing Chassis, and powered by the fabulous Auburndale Auto Parts and Machine Engine, comes down and across the start-finish line and wins the 1989 Metal Center Bluegrass 300. Keith Gardner, a set of perfect bookends in 1989, collecting the win in the Louisville 150, coming back in the season finale and collecting a 300-lap contest at the nation's finest short track, the Louisville Motor Speedway. And there you see the pit crew down on pit road. Kevin Gardner shaking hands there. The crew chief on Keith Gardner's car shaking the hand of Billy Harris and for Scott Walters' crew. And you just got to believe the Webb bunch will cross the pit road and do some handshaking as well. There you see, down on the front straightaway, the 1989 Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe, driven by Iroquois Park, Kentucky's Keith Gardner, the winner of the 1989 Metal Center Bluegrass 300. Good night.